Okay, I'm going to give you permission to record. Just hang on off. Okay, you can record now.
Yeah, I'm recording.
Okay, we'll do the morning brachas. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kedishan b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lasuk b'divrei Torah. Varev na Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu b'fivcha beit Yisrael. V'niyeh anachnu v'tzeitzeinu v'tzeitzeimcha beit Yisrael. Kulanu yodea shemecha v'lomdei Toratech lishmo. Baruch atah Adonai hamlamed Torah le'amo Yisrael.
Amen.
Baruch atah
Amen.
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'cha banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay. All right. So what we're gonna do is we did a very nice pace yesterday, guys. Well done. I just hope, please God, you I made it clear what's going on. Basically, we ended off on a very, very simple premise that it's you can't resolve Rava's inquiries. We're on 18b1 because there are a couple of factors here that make it a little bit unmanageable. The first factor is that you've got Keren Tam mixed with Sroros, which means Rava had two questions. His first question is regarding a case with utensils that go flying from an animal's foot. We know a case when a stone sends a vessel, but when a utensil goes flying, is it the starting a breaking point, or when it actually breaks? His teacher Rabba said it's the starting point. We're not sure. We went for Rav Ashi, who says it's the starting point, and Rav Bibi says, listen, it is authored by the rabbis, not Sumchus, but you can't make that logical deduction because it was the chicken's weight. So the bottom line is Rava's question couldn't be answered in this in this particular case so clearly. That's number one. Number two, Rava's other question was for the payment of Toros, the half payment damages. Is it like Regal where we pay from choice property, or is it like a case history of Keren Tam, where a tame animal which does damage? It was the only other case where we learned about half damage from the body of the animal. So why can't we learn it in this particular case? Because Rav Elazar has got some distinctions in his particular case. Your first distinction that you're dealing with is a case that the dog, Jesus, the cat, the dog actually moved the biscuit from point A to B. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, clearly.
Sorry, the cat stuck the mute button on. So basically, the dog moved the biscuit from A to B. Whilst doing that, so that's determined as a animal's force. When you move something from A to B, it's an animal's force. When an animal's body actually damages the article itself, that's known as actual muad regal damages. Okay, so the problem is here. That's your first issue. I'll tell you something. All right, now you're going. All right, good. Sorry, guys.
If it carries on, it could be catastrophic.
That's correct, Kevin.
Eh?
It could be.
This could be the catalyst to his murdering the cat.
Give it a Kit Kat, it'll be happy.
Sorry, guys. It drives me mad. I threw the thing outside. Apologies, really. All right. So bottom line, Rava wants to know in a case of actual tsoros, when it's mixed with Keren Tam, because it's unusual for a dog to expose itself to extreme heat, to take some sort of par of non-decent tasting biscuit off the brats, one thing. It's one thing if you took a different sort of animal that was a carnivore and was chalishing for meat and was starved for 3 days, but certainly not for a biscuit. So the minute Soros is mixed with an act of Keren, it's not a clear case of the half damages from the body of the animal, because with Keren, it's a clear case of half damages for the body of the animal. So we can't derive it from this case. That's number one. Number two, you've got 3 other issues with Rav Elazar. Number one, first issue, he agrees with Sumchus, which says what? Marco, did you manage to catch up and see what he said? Sorry, you're on mute.
Simco says that the case of Soros is full damages.
Yes, so if Rav Elazar agrees with him, there's nothing to talk about by answering his question, half damages on the body of the animal for Soros, because the only reason the question comes up is because Rav has said, is it like a subcategory of regal where it's choice property, or do we derive it from the body of the animal because it's half damages like keren tam? So if you hold like sumchus that it's full damages, Rav Elazar's case of the brisa wouldn't expound or elucidate or clear up any sort of issue with regards to the animal on a half payment damages. He agrees with sumchus. So that's your first cancellation that it's not going to be clear. The other issue that comes up is that Rav Elazar agrees with Rabbi Tarfon. So Kevin, what did Rabbi Tarfon say?
I'm not good with remembering what the Rabbonim say. Facts I sometimes remember,
It's not a
but
problem. The names elude me too. So as far as
give me a bit of a clue though. Is it about what is
okay,
he doesn't agree? He doesn't agree with Sumchos. Is that what you?
No. So Rav Elazar agrees with Rabbi Tarfon. So in the public domain, okay, in the public domain, how does that differ for Rabbi Tarfon compared to the private domain with regards to keren tam?
Either full or either half or no damages if it's in the public domain. It's it can never be full damages as far as I know.
Okay, and how does
either half or zero, half or none in the public domain.
Okay, so you hedged your bets, you got it half right. We'll give it to you that in the public domain, both the rabbis and Rabbi Tarfon agree that you have to pay half payment damages for keren tam in the public domain. The regular harashus. Arthur, what does Rabbi Tarfon say in the yard of a damaged party compared to the rabbis?
Then it's full damage.
Half.
No, he's right. Arthur's right.
Usually it's full. Okay, I thought maybe it's you could
it's your home. It's your home. In public, it's different.
No. But who says it, Rabbi Tarfon or the rabbis?
Yeah, the 50-50 bet. The rabbis. And Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Tarfon.
Release the trapdoor. There are sharks and crocodiles underneath there. Okay. So
sharks got red hair. Yeah.
Gavin, what do we say about Rabbi Tarfon versus the rabbis?
He says full payment, and the rabbis say half.
Excellent. All right. So although Gavin looks the most sleepy, he's the most awake. Great. So Gavin, well done. Gavin got it accurate. So Rabbi Tarfon says in the property of the damaged party's yard, for keren tam, there's full damages, absolutely, and the rabbis say it's half damages. The rabbis make no distinction in a public domain or in the private domain in another person's yard with regards to a keren tam. They say it's half damages. Rabbi Tarfon says public domain half damages, and the yard of the damaged party full damages. But what else does Rabbi Tarfon say, Gavin, on the issue?
It's from choice property. It's not from the goof of the animal either.
Not true. Absolutely not true. We learned.
Not true. I said it with absolute conviction, so that I'm wrong.
No, but that's true. And well done in the attempt. We learned something recently. We always did think that Rabbi Tarfon said it was from choice property. This is the first stuff where we learned that that other leniency does apply. That in the yard of the damaged party, the half payment is full payment according to Rabbi Tarfon, but it is on the body of the animal, which actually comes to further reduce payment. It will very rarely be heavy, especially if a chihuahua took the biscuit in this case. Then you wouldn't be paying a lot. So so that was another leniency that we learned. So the second leniency does apply. Now, we learned yesterday, I'm just testing you guys, Rav Elazar also agrees with Rabbi Yehuda. Who knows what Rabbi Yehuda said? Who's going to venture a guess? I'm not going to put anybody in the spot.
I think that this was the whole thing about, where you had the story about the Muad situation, but half of it was paid from a TUM scenario, and the rest was paid from choice property.
Excellent.
On the fourth instance.
Excellent. Michael might have been missing in action, but he didn't miss a thing. Okay. So that's exactly it.
Okay.
That is perfectly it. The case of it which Rav Elazar agrees is quite simply exactly like Rav Yehuda, that what happens is, according to Rav Yehuda, the TUM payment stays in place, that half payment damages from the gufa of the animal, and then when the animal becomes muad, that extra half is added in order to make full payment, but that half is made from choice property. And Rav Elazar obviously agrees with Rav Yehuda. The rabbis say that the minute an animal becomes muad, there's no longer the leniency of half payment damages, nor from the gufa of the damaging animal, the attacking animal. And in that particular case, we know it's all from choice property according to the rabbis. Okay, so now we can see that there's a bit of a problem. The problem is as follows. If you want to say that Sumchus talks about full payment damages for Choros because he doesn't recognize the law from Moshe of Har Sinai, he learns it differently. We haven't learned about Sumchus yet, about the force of its force. In other words, a secondary degree force. We don't know if Sumchus ever says that there's a half payment leniency and he learns the law from Moshe from Har Sinai like that, or that he doesn't hold at all that there's such a law from Moshe of Har Sinai from the rabbis that he learned. Does that make sense? So in principle, the rabbis and Sumchus agree that your force is exactly like your power. If I throw a brick through your window or I personally kick through your window, they say, what's the difference? You should pay. It's only from the special law from Moshe of Har Sinai that carries all the weight in the world, and it means it's half payment damages. Does that make sense? But in principle, Sumchus and the rabbis do agree without this leniency from Moshe of Har Sinai. Now, they say generally when Moshe brings a law from Har Sinai, it comes to add to a leniency if it's a special law. All right, so here's the problem. So if Rav Elazar holds by Sumchus and it's full payment damages for Tzoros, it won't answer Rav's question on the body of the dog. That only occurs if they're half payment damages, because we don't know if it's a case history of Keren Tam, where we learned half payment damages from the body of an animal, or do we learn that the half payment damages are a subcategory of regal from choice property? And if you want to confuse the issue by saying Rav Elazar holds with Rav Yehuda, again, it doesn't really answer the question, because if you want to say it's for the Keren Tam, it's half the payment in the body, half the payment damage from the body of the animal, and the rest of the half payment from choice property, then my question is either I'm learning it wrong or I need Rabbi Cohen to clear it up, or see all of the above. Is that how can he then agree with Rabbi Tarfon? Because what's principally the difference here? The only difference I can see is if he holds by Rabbi Tarfon that in the yard of the damaged party, there's full damages but from the body of the animal. When the animal becomes muad, the only difference is what? Do you then go back to half damages and then say that's from the animal, and the other part of that half damages is from choice property? It still doesn't answer Rava's question entirely.
I don't know. They really confuse matters anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe I just don't appreciate it.
Yeah, I get it. So I'm saying it's fine. You can retroactively say, fine, it's muad. Now let's work out that other half according to choice property. But it still doesn't answer any of the questions. That's what the Gemara is basically saying. So kind of why bring it up? But sometimes the Gemara brings these up in order to teach you the other laws and how they get applied. Okay, so I just want to go through one or two things. Okay, so this case is one of Keren Tab. It's a simple case. Okay, so how it ended off on 18A3 is it says, listen, Rav Sama, the son of Rav Ashi, said to Ravina, say, that what you heard about Rav Yehuda concerns specifically the tam that becomes a muad. But in the case of something that becomes muad from its very beginning. So what this is actually saying is, have you ever heard about Rav Yehuda that he treats the first half of payment like the payment of tam? Certainly not for tzoros. Because why? Rav Elazar is agreeing with Sumchus that it's full payment for tzoros. So what's this issue about the half payment from the body of the animal? It doesn't make sense to bring it up here. This is what the Gemara is saying. Does that make sense? Fine. So let's just try and see if we can have some sort of resolution. So what happened is the Brisa questioned the proposition and said, basically, is there muad for tzoros or is there no muad for tzoros? So if we follow Rav Elazar, there is muad for tzoros because he agrees with Sumchus. If we agree with the Tana Kamma, in other words, the opinion of the rabbis, there's no muad for tzoros because they say it's half payment damages. So Rava would say to you in defense of his unresolved inquiries, when I inquired about these matters, it was according to the view of the rabbis who dispute Sumchus and hold that one pays only half damages for tzoros. But here in the Brisa, both the rabbis, the Tana Kamma and Rav Elazar, hold the view of Sumchus, who say that for tzoros one pays full damages. And what is the reason of the rabbis, the Tana Kamma, who said that the dog's owner pays half damages? Because the Brisa refers to where the dog acted abnormally but did not become muad. And it is in this point of dispute between Rabbi Tarfon and the rabbis that the Tanaim of the Brisa argue. Why? Because in the yard of the damaged party, we discussed this, but this has nothing to do with, we're on 18b2 here, guys, we're flying through. This has nothing to do with the question, because say that what you have heard about Rabbi Tarfon's concerns, specifically the payment of full damages for carrying tam on the premises of the damaged party. But did you hear about Rabbi Tarfon that he limits those damages to payment from the body of the animal? So that's where we get the fact that even though it's full payment, it's from the body of the animal. The Gemara answers, yes, indeed, it can be shown that Rabbi Tarfon limits the full damages to payment from the body of the animals as follows. Now we're going to hit something new. Where does he derive it that Keren Tam pays full damages in the damaged party's yard? Through a kol v'chomer from the law of Keren Tam in the public domain. Thus, we apply the principle, it's sufficient for the law to be derived to be the same as the source law. I'm going to explain what this means now. And then the Gemara says, but Rabbi Tarfon does not subscribe to the principle of dayu, which means it is sufficient. I'm going to explain what this means now. So the Gemara replies, when does he not subscribe to it is sufficient? Only when the kol v'chomer would be nullified by applying that principle. But where the kol v'chomer is not nullified, he does describe to the principle it is sufficient. Okay, so now, guys, we basically went full circle where we said that this can't possibly answer Rava's question. Does that make sense, no matter which way you look at it? Now, did any of you understand when you went through your self-study about this law of dayu versus a kol v'chomer?
I
Looked
don't
at
know
it briefly, but can't.
Now I went through it. I just don't know what dayu
Yeah.
the words. Maybe I read it differently.
Okay, so dayu, you've all on the Haggadah heard the word dayenu. So,
Means enough. Stop.
Yeah. Enough. Yeah.
Stop.
enough, stop. That's exactly it.
Yeah. Die. Yeah.
Yeah. So
In Hebrew. Yeah.
yeah. So what we're dealing with here is dayu comes from that same word. It's an Aramaic word which means stop. It's sufficient. So it's basically a limiting principle, which is the opposite of a kal v'chomer. Kal v'chomer is a fortiori argument. Do you know what a fortiori argument is in Latin?
Open
No,
argument. Open? Lenient?
A kal v'chomer, Gavin, how would you describe a kal v'chomer, since you've dealt with it a lot?
A kal v'chomer is like a link between one
Getting there?
piece in a Talmud versus another piece. So what happens is you can use somebody else's logic because it has something in common with what you're doing, or you can use Hashem's logic. You can be something literal directly from the Torah.
Yeah, I think,
Okay. Gavin did
Yeah.
bring up two relevant points there, Michael. Just 2 points. Is that it's used to extrapolate the principle from the source argument to the derivative argument. That is valid. And number 2, it is based on Sphora logic as opposed to scriptural sourcing. That's correct. That's correct. But Gavin, there's still a point that you missed about kal v'chomer, but you got 2 points. Michael, did you want to add something?
No, I wanted to give somebody else a turn. That's why.
Thank you so
I
much.
always, when I hear the word kal v'chomer, I always think of the words all the more so.
Exactly.
So I always think of a situation where whatever it is, if it's lesser, for example, than another situation, it means that if the other situation has even more of the elements of that situation than the previous one, it has to be applied just as much or even more.
Correct. So between Gavin and Michael, you hit a home run, guys. You did absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. So
Team effort.
it's amazing. So what the one is the one is actually a leniency and the one is actually a stringency. So fortiori argument is exactly like one Michael said. You're taking the source argument and you say even more so in this other case where it would seem to be a more extreme case. So it's expounding and what do you call it, emphasizing the point, whereas dayu is coming to limit the point.
So you say that is the opposite of a
The
kal
opposite.
v'chomer.
It's exactly the opposite.
Yeah. The other one I don't understand is that thing where it's similar. The characteristics are similar and you make the application between the two. But remember that one. Anyway, don't go there.
Marco, it's important. This. Give me an example.
I can't remember what it's called, but it's also one of those principles in Gemara where you where it's like for like. It's where you take a characteristic of something and then you apply to the other, and then you can make reference that the other is true as well. But it's on the same level kind of thing. I don't know what it's called.
Okay, so that would make sense. So what Marco is saying is that you'd have a balance between the two. And the balance between the two is here. You have a dio, which is a limiting principle saying, all right, this is sufficient. This is where the case no longer applies. Then you have the case of a kal v'chomer, which says even more so in this case it would apply. Then you would have the middle of the road, which means in this exact other case, the same principle would apply without it being even more of a stringent punishment. Does that make sense? So Michael's right. There's a middle road that's taken where you're not making the derivative law a stronger case than the source law. That is a principle where it's the same. And let me give you a perfect example, guys, in Bava Kamma. Kev, you with me? Kev? Okay, I think we lost Kevin. Guys, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, clearly.
Okay, where's Kevin?
Kevin. Looks like he's frozen actually. Because he hasn't moved.
He's moving.
No, on my side, he's not. I just lost him. He's gone.
Where's Gavin? Oh, there he is.
No, I'm here.
He's back.
All right. So I'm gonna just add a chime when Kevin comes back. All right. So this is the issue. If we look at the main categories of everything we learned from Keren, Shane, and Regal, this expounds on Michael's principle perfectly. It's not a kal v'chomer. No, where's Gavin? It's not a kal v'chomer. Oh dear. How did everybody go missing in action?
I'm still
Okay,
here.
I think you have to carry on because people have to go back to it. Otherwise, it's going to mess up the
All
whole
right.
timing.
All right, that's fine. So I'll go
Okay.
back to it. Kevin's in the waiting room. That's fine. All right, so this, just give me 10 seconds to get Kevin back. He's here. He's come all the way back. Sorry, Michael. Do the
No,
same
it's
thing for
fine.
you.
I like that.
And we like you.
So my connection
Gavin's gone.
went off there, guys. Just sorry about
Okay, no problem. All right, so Gavin will come on when he does. So what?
Can you
what-
just go back 1 minute and what just repeat?
All right.
You were talking about the kal v'chomer. Did you
All
do you
right.
have an example?
Yes. So look, we're going to say, I'm gonna use 3 examples to do the dayu, the kal v'chomer, and the middle of the road. So kal v'chomer means even more so. It's a fortiori argument, saying in this case where the situation applies, it would be even more logical that it would apply in the secondary case. I was going to show you an example now. Just want you to understand the principle. But the middle of the road is what we use most often rather than a kal v'chomer. So Michael, let's take Keren, Shane, and Regal. Let's look at every toldos, right? Of Keren, Shane, and Regal compared to the Av. Let's take every one of the toldos of Shabbos compared to the Av Melocha of the 39 Melochas. Take every one and see if it's not a case of equal extrapolation. So let's have a look. Yeah, I'm just going to share my chart and then this will explain it perfectly. Just give me 1 sec. Just give me 1 sec, guys. I'm just getting my chart. Okay. Yeah, I've got it. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. All right. See, tell me if I've got you guys on the screen.
Yeah.
All right, fine. Let's look at the main Av. The Av is always referred to in Shabbat. From Rav Elazar says the same thing, is that the Av is the Melocha that's in the Chumash, always. So when you have the Av of Keren, Shane, and Regal, that's always in the Chumash. That's your historical verification of your primary, your primary case, and that in fact is in the source derivative. Tell me when Gavin's on board because I'm sharing the chart. I can't see you guys. Gav, are you in?
I can see the chart.
Okay, is Gavin in now?
Yeah, I am
he's in.
All right.
Sorry,
Gavin,
sorry.
No problem. Let's get started. Let's not have a 5-minute explanation. I understand completely you had technical issues. There's no problem.
Technical issues, yeah.
All right. So listen, what I was saying to the guys is as follows. Most of your arguments are not kal v'chomers or dayus. What they are is the exact extrapolation. If I give you the 39 melochas of Shabbos, the 39 melochas are historical processes that took place to build the Mishkan, the tabernacle. And those 39 categories are what are prohibited. So if we take an example of Shabbos, the Av would be planting, and the Torah would be watering. because both enhance plant growth. Are you with me? But the biblical enactment was planting because you needed to plant certain things in order to build the Mishkan. And the Tordos are anything that you water. When you're chopping down trees or harvesting plants or wheat or whatever for the showbreads in the Mishkan, that is the Av. The Tordos is what? Cutting flowers to put it on your table for Shabbat. Now, is there any kol v'chomer there? No, there's no kol v'chomer. Is there any dayu? No, there's no dayu. What's the proof that there's no dayu? Is that the punishment is the same. Again, if you do a av or a tordo, it's a death penalty if you've done it on purpose for Shabbos and you had warnings, etc., etc. There's a korban chatas for the avod or tordos and breaking Shabbos if it was b'shoigeg, accidental, in a state of unawareness. You either knew that you didn't know the act was prohibited or you didn't know it was Shabbos. Are you with me, guys? So there, it's an exact extrapolation. There's no kol v'chomer and there's no limitation. We would say there would be a dayo maybe if, for example, there was a death penalty for Av, but for the tordos, you had to bring a simple offering if you did it on purpose. The fact that there's a death penalty for both the Av and the tordos proves there's no dayo there. And it proves that there's no kol v'chomer because there can never be a kol v'chomer from scriptural source to conceptual adaptation. Never. Let's look at Keren quickly. Keren is in the Chumash. And since Keren is in the Chumash, the subcategories, the Tordos, are conceptually identical to the primary category. In other words, it's unusual damage that the animal does with intent to injure or kill. And we look at the word keren, and we look at the word nagicha, which is the biting, and nagifa. Nagifa is pushing with the body. Nagicha, by the way, is pushing with the horns, which is part of keren. Keren either does, what do you call it, a gallop and a charge, or alternatively it pushes with the horns, which is nagicha. Nagifa is pushing with the body. Nashicha is biting, Revitza is squatting, and Ve'ita is kicking. So these are all have the same operating principles and are conceptually the same. If you look at the Toldot of tooth, Shane, it's physical gratification. And every one of them, whether it's rubbing up against a wall and the wall falls over to satisfy an itch, or soiling fruits by the animal rubbing up against it, the oven, the Toldot are the same, so it's not a dayu, Michael. So it's not a limitation, because we learned that the Tordos halachically are the same payment as the Av. So therefore it's not a dayu, it doesn't come to limit it. And it's not a kol v'chomer because the Tordos are not that you're paying more than the Av. And the same with foot regel. Any damage that the animal causes with natural movement, in that particular case, resembles the Av conceptually. Does that make sense? So in most cases, you have the middle of the road. In terms of what that principle is called, I need to find out, Marco. It's a good point.
So, Damon, just repeat that last 30 seconds. Sorry, I just had to.
Okay, so what we're saying
about
is
the Av,
got three extremes. The one is a kol v'chomer, even more so fortiori argument. That was the Latin term for it, which means in this case, if we understood it to be this principle, in the other case, even more so, because it seems to accentuate the point even stronger. So in that case, that would be a kol v'chomer. A dayu would say, listen, in the secondary case, we come to limit it because some of the circumstances have changed. So it's either a leniency or a limitation of application of that principle. And the middle of the road, which I'm going to ask Rabbi Cohen about, is the principle we mainly learn from Tordos, from Avs. Does that make sense? Where there's a dayu is when we learn the laws of Tuma and Tara. Do you remember we learned Tuma, that the less intensity of impurity there is, the less the application of what you can infect. That's a dayo. That's exactly an example. All right, guys, tomorrow we'll see how it works out in this particular case with a kol v'chomer versus a dayu. And thank you for today. I hope it was clear.